child from the ages of 4 to 11, because typically a seventh grader is 12 years old, their frontal cortex is underdeveloped. They can't process the information. It's too confusing for them. And what we do, and we see in medicine, we see in psychology, when we introduce sex when children are that young, it actually creates this hypersexualism and actually predisposes them to be assaulted, molested. The curiosity goes through the roof because they can't understand it. And so at that point, we would potentially be setting all these children up for a life of addiction, suicide, gender confusion, putting them at risk to be hypersexual too soon.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to Our Watch. I am Tim Thompson, and we have a very special guest with us today, a candidate running for school board in Murrieta, California. Courtney Cooper is in the house. Courtney, so glad to have you here today.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me, Pastor Tim.
Yeah, we're excited that you're running. This has been something to me that's been so important, is having strong candidates like yourself, somebody that we know when you run, parents are going to see who you are, and they're going to go, that's the type of person we want. So for the audience today, why don't you share a little bit about who you are as a person?
Sure, yeah. So I'm 36 years old. I'm married. I grew up in Temecula wine country, and I have two children that attend Murrieta Valley Unified School District. My son is in 9th grade. He goes to Murrieta Valley High, and my daughter is in 8th grade, and she goes to Thompson Middle School. I also am a nurse practitioner in the community, and I practice medicine at all our 4 local hospitals. Prior to becoming a nurse practitioner, I was a nurse out here as well. So
you got kids in school, so you got skin in the game.
Yes.
You know, and to me, that's super important when we look at who's running for school board. There's a lot of people who've been on the school board for years and years and years and years. And it's like, okay, we need to get them out. We need to get some fresh people in there, people who have skin in the game. You've got kids. You want to make sure that they're in a good environment. And I would assume as you're doing what you're doing and raising up kids, you're seeing an environment on school campuses that, in your opinion, isn't a strong, healthy environment for your kids. Why are you running for school board?
I'm running to give parents a voice. I feel that had COVID not happened, no one would have been awake and seen the indoctrination that was occurring. I firmly believe that you can read about it, you can hear about it, but until you see the indoctrination coming into your own home and you having to counter it through your children, you don't really understand how deep-rooted it really is.
Yeah, so you say indoctrination. One of the terms I've been talking about is sexual indoctrination. Mm-hmm. And, I've often said, like, look, what 2 adults do at home, that's up to them.
Correct.
But what we don't want is adults talking to children about sexual issues.
Correct.
To me, that's a better conversation for the dinner table at home.
Correct.
What is it about the type of sexual indoctrination that you're seeing that you're saying, okay, we got to put a stop to some of these things?
So the graphic details being exposed, exposing children at a younger age when their minds aren't capable of even understanding it, has a shock on their psyche, and that's something we should not be doing whatsoever. There's a certain age group that you can introduce sex education, but that education needs to be based on preventing pregnancy and STDs. It doesn't matter if it's homosexual sex or heterosexual sex. There's certain age groups that it should not be introduced to, and I'm a firm believer that it should not be in elementary schools, which is K through 5th grade. And then of the area of which I'm running for, which is Area 2, my 4 schools are the elementary schools.
So years ago, I say years, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was trying to work with the Murrieta School District School Board, and we had an attorney prepare a policy, and this policy said nothing sexual talked about prior to 7th grade. So the law right now, as AB 329 was passed 7 years ago, the law states that it has to be taught once in 7th grade and then once in high school, anytime in high school. So that's the law, but It doesn't prohibit it from being taught before 7th grade. So we said, hey, let's just put a policy together that says nothing below 7th grade. Don't talk to kindergartners about this. Mm-hmm. Sadly, the entire school board unanimously voted to not do that, and unanimously voted some other radical sexual natured things into the school. So when elected, are you willing to ensure that nothing goes below 7th grade?
Yeah, so any child from the ages of 4 to 11, because typically a 7th grader is 12 years old, their frontal cortex is underdeveloped. They can't process the information. It's too confusing for them. And what we do, and we see in medicine, we see in psychology, when we introduce sex when children are that young, it actually creates this hypersexualism and actually predisposes them to be assaulted, molested. The curiosity goes through the roof because they can't understand it. And so at that point, we would potentially be setting all these children up for a life of addiction, suicide, gender confusion, putting them at risk to be hypersexual too soon. We already know the psychological effects that come from that.
Right. You talked about the gender confusion. That's obviously a big topic right now. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of parents on one side, the way I see it, a lot of parents on one side of the issue and a very small few amount of parents on the other side of that issue.
Correct.
And the parents on the side of the issue that says, hey, we need to affirm these things in the children's lives, they're being very loud. They're a very loud minority.
Right.
But the vast majority of parents are saying, look, I just want my kids to grow up in an environment where boys are boys, girls are girls, they're out on the playground. We don't need to pump this kind of confusion into their minds. And that's not to discount the fact that there are truly, legitimately children that have gender dysphoria. I get that. Yeah. But one of the things that's been said about things going on in the Murrieta School District, and that's where you're running, is that there are teachers who are talking to kids saying, hey, this is a safe space. If you're a boy, you could be a girl. We won't tell your parents. As a school board member, what do you think about those type of things happening on a public school campus?
I'm in complete opposition of teachers taking on the parental role. School campuses are not foster care campuses. The first person that needs to be contacted regarding a child's gender confusion, gender dysphoria, any issues they have needs to go directly to the parent, and then a school psychologist or, a private psychologist needs to be involved. But it has absolutely nothing to do with the teachers, the principal, or the school board. Our job is to ensure the children are safe, that they're learning, that they're literate, that they're being educated, not indoctrinated. Sex is an adult issue, heterosexual or homosexual. It's not our job to fill in the gaps for parents. Right. Parents are capable of teaching their children what they want to teach them. And if we in school can honor cultural and religious practices and we separate it from education, we should also be able to separate sex education.
You talk about the parents' rights. That's a big issue. Youngkin in Virginia, we saw as he won, that was kind of an upset, really. Right. But he won because he was standing on the side of parental rights. Right. And I think that's going to be a big issue come November 8th. I think it's going to be an issue that really puts you into that seat on the school board. Talk about your position on parental rights. You've already kind of hit it a little bit, but really when it comes to the issue of parental rights, what are some of your main things that you want to make sure are accomplished?
Whether it's you have the ability to opt into a course rather than opt out. I feel that some of these courses, depending on the course content and what it's truly focused on, parents should be able to opt in rather than have to accidentally miss the email to opt out, and then their children are still exposed to something they didn't want. This is their money. This is their taxpayer money. They have a right to this education. They shouldn't have to go out and get a second or third job or pay $1,000, a couple $1,000s a month to go to a private school because we have a right in America to public schools. We fund them. Yeah. So when it comes to children and parents should be at the center of their child's education. It should not be coming from Sacramento on what our children should be taught or shouldn't. We should have a say.
Yeah. Sacramento loves to force their will on us. There's a thing called local control there, and that's where if somebody like yourself gets on the school board, now we start to exercise that local control.
Right.
And that's so important.
The school boards kept saying that they couldn't do anything about the curriculum coming from Sacramento, but they're given several options, and they do have the power and authority to pick and choose what they implement at their school.
Not only that, they even have the right and the authority to write their own curriculum. Correct. Should they choose.
Correct.
So a lot of these school boards are just going, there's nothing we can do, and this is what the state says. says. This is what the state says. And so what they're doing is they're representing the state to us instead of representing us to the state. And this is where I'm excited about people like you, because you're going to represent us to the state. And that's
I'm here for the people.
important.
I'm here for parents. I'm here for the kids. This is all for the safety of children.
Yeah.
Sexual indoctrination is pedophilia.
Yeah.
It truly is.
Yeah. Ethnic studies are going to be a big topic. You have much to say about that. Governor Jerry Brown passed something. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I can actually pull it up on my phone. So back in 2016, Governor Jerry Brown actually passed the Assembly Bill 2016, and it was implemented by Gavin Newsom in 2021. And it was created as a new ethnic studies curriculum that identifies certain racial and ethnic groups and skin colors as oppressed, encouraging students to rise up against oppressors. Well, the thing of it is, children don't see in color. Racism is taught. And so we have to get back to the basics of teaching children to be innocent across the board. Once you start implementing anything like these, ethnic studies, you're teaching them to see in Hispanic, Asian, Mexican, right? Black, and all the other colors. We don't see that. As a kid, I remember as a kid being in elementary school and junior high, I had friends of all different colors. I had a band, we were called 3 Shades of Brown, and we sang and taught people that everyone is equal, all races are equal. And so I didn't actually see race until high school, when my Hispanic friend or my African American friend, we were no longer friends. They all separated by actual skin color, which, that was back in 2000. So this, ethnic study indoctrination has been happening for a long time, because I'm 36. I graduated high school in 2004. So looking back now, doing the research, pulling these old bills, this is really deep rooted.
Yeah. Yeah. And what we're doing is we're purposefully putting our children in an environment where we're telling them you are oppressed or you are an oppressor. We're
Correct.
Dividing our
Correct.
Kids day one with this type of study.
Yeah, and if you talk to some of these teachers on high school campuses, they'll tell you that the courtyards are like a prison yard.
Yeah.
You have separation of ethnicities, and that shouldn't be happening in school.
No.
Especially when these kids can barely even graduate. California is ranked 34th out of 50 states in academic excellence. These children are illiterate.
Yeah.
And when you're illiterate, you can't cognitively think. You can't critically think. And you definitely can't differentiate a republic from a socialist regime.
Right. Talk about law enforcement, if you would. What's your view on law enforcement on campus?
So since, 2020 and the pandemic and the borders being wide open, fentanyl is a huge crisis across the board, even inland. In our areas and our hospitals out here, your kid goes to a party, being a teenager, exploring, has a beer, pops a Norco, but the Norco's laced with fentanyl. And there that kid is getting Narcan in the field. So my plan is to get police on all high school campuses, not just resource officers, but police officers with a drug dog that will come on campus and sniff out fentanyl. And if we can save just one kid's life, it was worth the money. Yeah. And then the same thing with having police on campus. During COVID, there was no active shooter training. They kept saying, everyone stay in their home. That would have been the opportune time to teach all these, teachers and staff how to respond to an active shooter assault. But it wasn't done. Yeah. And so we have to get back to ensuring that our kids are safe. We have to make sure that when you go to work, when I go to work, that I'm not worried about my school not being well equipped to handle an active shooter, to make sure drugs aren't on campus for accidental exposure, right? You can inhale that stuff and drop dead.
Right.
Just by the bag being open. You don't have to actually even touch it. Right. We know this in medicine.
Right.
So we need police on the forefront. There's going to be no defunding of police on my watch, that's for sure.
Amen to that. So we're out of time right now. How can people connect with you and help you out with your campaign? How can they contribute towards it financially, get involved, knock on doors, all of that stuff?
Yes, please reach out. I handle my own Instagram account. So if you reach out to me, I will respond to you directly. I'm going to be linking up with volunteers, and we're already walking door to door. So if you can be boots on the ground with me, I'd much appreciate it.
And what's your handle on Instagram?
It's Courtney Cooper for MVUSD Area 2.
All right.
Okay.
Courtney Cooper.
Thank you.
Best of luck to you. Anything we can do for you, you let us know.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. God bless you. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Our Watch with Tim Thompson.